Hello to everybody. I'm not prone to doing any motorcycle reviews, to be honest, but I watched quite a few, YouTube videos about the Versys and quite a few, press reports and stuff, and can't help but think, the little bit short-changed on the information that you can get or should get. The professional sort of testers just kind of borrow a bike from a dealer for a morning or an afternoon or whatever, ride them in town up a dual carriageway and so on, and come up with some sort of conclusion. Where the likes of the motorcycle news and that, I'm not really that impressed with any of them, because let's face it, you can name the bike of the year next year, the year before it's done, when it comes to the adventure bike class. And the big three basically are talked about pretty much all year, and the middleweights really get a look in, and always seem to get ridden hard and outside the remit. So anyway, just as a bit of context, been around bikes quite a long time, and I've owned quite a lot. I've had two strokes when I was younger. The sap's still rising. 250 LCs, 350 power valves, GT 380s, rather. And then some big, big bore sports bikes, GPZ 900 and ZX9, ZZR 1100. Had a Blackbird for a while, and later on, this last sort of 15-20 years, I've had quite a few adventure bikes, 1150 GS, 1200 GS, Varaderos, 5 and 6 speed, what else, V-Stroms, 650 and 1000, T7, XT660Z, so quite a few. So I've got something to reference with when it comes down to comparing things, I suppose. Test rode quite a few. I had a Mark III Versys, and I liked it. Did 10,000 mile on it in a year or a season. And I was trying to convince myself maybe, to go back up to the 1000cc class. There's a tracer there. Looks quite nice too, up, doesn't it? Test rode one of them as well. So what did they have a go at? Tracer 7, Tracer 9, versus 1000 standard, versus 1000 SE, NT 1100. So tried a few, and after all that, long story short, I decided that it's going to be another 650. So as you're probably aware, they brought out like an upgraded version, nicer clocks, traction control for not really needed, but nice to have just in case. This young man gonna do. Can't turn right, can he? Can do anything, these kids, can't they? So we're look, man, no tea. We went back with a 650. Nice information, if you've already got a 650, is I had some touring stuff that I'd accumulated, a centre stand, some engine bars, nicer seat, and I even had a really leery Del Kelvic exhaust on there, which was nice at times, but probably, to be honest, just a little bit too loud. Point of this being is that they will all swap over to the Mark IV, so that was good. You know, saved yourself a bit of a wedge there. Certainly 500 quid's worth. All went from the Mark III to the Mark IV. If anyone, you know, is owning a Mark III and wondering, the chassis and everything is pretty much the same, until you come to the nose fairing, which is obviously different. I quite like the improvement in the fairing of the screen, because it sits the whole cockpit up higher, and although you get good weather protection on the Mark III, it kind of integrates the screen a lot nicer. And this is a big Givi touring screen, and it's only on the notch number 1, I think. Certainly nowhere near its full extension. And as with both the Mark III and the Mark IV, the standard screen, you know, for bad weather touring, it's a bit too skinny, particularly if you're a tall boy. You know, I'm a fairly big unit, 16 stone, 6'1", so I find the screen setup, the cockpit setup, more pleasant. I find the clocks are nicer, not deal breaker, but you know, they're nice to have. And this is particularly useful, this bracket that's put on, you know, so your sat nav and your tyre pressure thing and anything else you want to bung the you know, is catered for. It's pretty standard, you know, fitment on a lot of bikes now. T7 I had a T7 and that had it on. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, you look at this 30 mile an hour limit, man. 30 mile an hour limit. Looking pub there and schools and Sunday at the park there with kids in Sunday afternoon. No wonder we get twatted, you know, for what's you wonder, don't you? I mean, you know, I still got a pulse. I'm not, you know, a killjoy, but Jesus, these boys, you know, need to give their head a wobble. Anyway, yeah, so generally the upgrades are just enough to, you know, pique your interest, and don't mind me, you know. That's basically why the versys is, you know, I suppose a touring bike, and these lads have still got the stat rising. They still think, you know, they're going to beat the world. So the general idea was, and here's the thing, I kind of bought the Mark IV because fundamentally it's the same as the Mark III, and I really liked the Mark III. I thought it was really good. So there's no improvements in horsepower. The chassis and suspension remains the same. The general ergos remains the same. Yeah, but I'd have to tweak it a little bit. I mean, I put lowering foot pegs on, and there's a device to raise the seat, and I've also got inch bar rises that bring them back towards me, and it really is one of the comfiest things I've ever ridden, and I've had a few. It's just like sitting in an armchair. On the subject of comfort, there's the suspension, which is adjustable on the front, preload on the rear, and Kawasaki have set it up soft. It is soft. It's not ridiculous. It's, you know, it can get, you know, a little bit bouncy if you push it on these fen roads, you know. Well, this is, believe me, a bumpy old road, this, and it's really, really plush. As I say, you've got to bear in mind the remit is touring. You know, I want the bike for touring. I don't want to enter the Hillbilly Grand Prix like them idiots we've just seen. And riding, you know, on these back roads, or well, any road, it has a really sort of nice, soft, plush nature to it. And it's surprising for the price point of the bike how plush it is. You know, I've ridden quite a bit of the competition, NC 750 for instance. I also had a go on a Tiger 660, and the rear suspension on that is absolutely pants. It's terrible. And the first thing I'd have to do on taking delivery of that is, you know, look on Brooks suspension and try and find a new rear shock for it. Non-adjustable, and the valving is the problem there. Anyway, back to the Versys. As you can see, this is, you know, pretty bumpy. I'm not going to try and push it too hard and knock my teeth out for the sake of a YouTube video, but very pattery here. And honestly, you can probably see by the top of the screen, it just laps it up. It's absolutely, you know, plush as something very plush. So you really can't sort of knock the suspension. You can play with the settings, the what do you call it? Blah 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 blah. What are those things called? Them clicky things. You've got rebound damping and this compression. And I have played with them on the Mark III, and to be honest, for a touring remit, the standard settings are pretty much where you want to be. I shouldn't have come down here. This is no off-road bike. Little CRF 300s will rip down here, you know, 60 miles an hour. But I've just come down here basically to prove it's no off-road bike, and it isn't. I've done a few fire tracks on it, you know, Kielder and stuff, and it'll you know, bosh down there, but if you start taking liberties, it quickly becomes beyond its remit. One of the things I really like about the Versys is that it's got no pretensions of being an off-road bike. 17-inch wheels, road rubber, no tyres, sorry, pardon me, there's no tubes or any of that crap. It's set up to be a soft tourer, and I'm quite at home with that. I'm quite open to that, because, as I say, I've got other machines that you know, this isn't off-road. Last time I came down here, you could see the tarmac has obviously had some dust storms and stuff, and tractors have left all the crap all over it. Point being, I suppose, is that, you know, you get these little things, you know, bad roads, and this is, you know, just laps it up, absolutely laps it up. I don't know what it's like two up, you know, in the, you know, conditions like that, just as bad as any other bike, I'd imagine. You know, just have to go slowly. On that subject, I really think there's plenty of power for me solo, and I have taken a passenger. I gave my mate a lift down to job he was doing a while back, and although the bike, it does it. It's okay, I mean, it's not like standing still or anything, but it just gets its balls cut off. You wind the elastic band up, and it'll just ghost down the motorway to up at 85 mile an hour without a second thought. But it just takes the acceleration element out of it, and just makes it labour a little bit. So from my perspective, not everybody's, but from mine, this is a solo bike, for long distance, that'll take a passenger more than adequately well, quite comfortably, but just detract a little bit from, not quite dynamic enough to keep the entertainment going, if that makes any sense. Depends on your experience and how fast you want to go, I suppose, but from my perspective, that's my take. So yeah, a gearbox. I'm trying to just split through things in no particular order. When you first get them, they seem to be a bit notchy, particularly the first 3 years, get a bit of a clunk and a click, and these things are sensitive to chain tension. You just have to have it in the zone, not too slack for sure. So they don't like a slack chain, they don't respond well to it. Now that said, if you give it a few miles, this one's just coming up to 3,000 now, and it's bedded in. Weirdly, must know it's on YouTube, it's not clicking. Sometimes you get a click or a clunk on them first 3 years, and it's just starting to recede to the point where you can hardly notice. I'd say by 4,000 and 5,000 miles on the Mark III, it had gone completely, and it's as sweet as a nut. Very sort of close. There's no lag between the gears. It's a nicely spaced box, and maybe on the shorter side. And on the subject, I never got round to it on the Mark III. A couple of months after I bought this, I got round to doing trying a 16 tooth front sprocket. Did the same on the T7. That was that engine was very similar, and I managed to fit a 16 on that. I'm sure it was a 16, same as this. Similar CC, similar final drives, and they both, take it really well. I'd probably say that the 6th gear on this, if anything, is a little bit short, and they can easily take the bigger front sprocket. Makes the gears longer, and how can you put it? More suited for sort of touring. It must obviously just take a little bit of the dynamic out of the acceleration, but honestly, having owned them for a while, I don't particularly notice anything much in the way of loss of performance. It's never going to be a rocket ship, this class of bikes, if I wanted to accelerate faster, I'll just go buy a bigger bike. As I say, I've tried quite a few, I've owned quite a few, and how can I put it? I don't feel like I'm missing any overtakes or any substantial fun on this bike, and in the real world, I mean, how fast really can you go? So I've still got a pulse. I still appreciate a fast bike, but when I'm touring, mostly on my own, overall top speed is is immaterial. So I tend to keep off the you know, the motorways as much as I can. Do use them like everybody else. But I suppose I'm not really interested anymore in trying to, you know, enter the old Billy Grand Prix. I've toured on the Versys with you know, lads on sort of 1250 GSs and big Tigers and all that kind of thing. And I'm being honest, I had absolutely no trouble at all, sort of comfortably staying with them. I mean, you know, the sensible lads, you know, they're not out to do it, but you know, a nice sort of brisk touring pace. I think you know, one or two of the chaps, you know, were quite surprised that the Kawasaki was actually still in the mirrors, to be honest. So the motor itself, it's you know, a long tooth now in design, I suppose. It's been around a long time. I'm not sure, but it must be, you know, clicking on towards 20 years. So a bit like the V-Strom, isn't it? I have one of them, and they're still able to sell them. There are quite some similarities between this motor and the T7 I had and the V-Strom. It's not substantially, noticeably any slower. One thing Kawasaki have done with this engine, they've been quite clever, I think, because what I mean by that is, you know, it's got about 70 horsepower, and I can't remember what the torque is, but you know, the peak torque is about 6,500 revs from what I remember. And they've put the meat of the engine, you know, right in the middle, right where you live. So in the real world, you know, it may have limited power, but the power that it's making is just where you need it, just in that sort of you know, 5 to 7 zone. You know, it pulls reasonably well from 4, clicks its heels at 5, and then between 6 and 7 it's got a fairly pleasing shove. So yeah, as I say, I don't feel, even after riding or roading, you know, some of the competition, that this engine is lacking for me in any way. It's got a really pleasant, sort of easy nature to it. So yeah, all good in the motoring department for me. It's such a easy sort of bike to ride. As I say, I've owned a few thousands, and you know, they can be quite demanding. They're kind of fussy, they're eager, they always want to bloody go, and that's great when you're in the mood. But I honestly find the 650 a really sort of pleasant thing just to let the rolls, let the miles roll by on. Test rode the Versys 1000 as well, Tracer 9. Tracer 9 had some engine in it, really eager, always felt like impatient, wanted to go and wants to go, and, which is good, but not all the time. More so than the Versys 1000. You know, the Versys 1000 was a little bit tamer than the Tracer. Still had plenty of shove in it, but once you get over the novelty of, you know, giving it a bit of a pace in the second gear, there's not much in it. Which brings you, you know, to thinking like, do I really want another 1000cc? You know, I've had, I don't know, dozens now, I suppose. here's the rub. I mean, this thing has got the 21 litre tank, which is similar to my old V-Strom, I think. Similar miles to the gallon, and doing what I'm doing now, just touring round, not riding like a numb. Mix of roads, 60 miles to the gallon. Rode back from Berwick, not so long back to near Liverpool, and that was I don't usually clock it, but it was 241 mile when I got home, and then I whipped it up to the garage a couple of days later, and it took 18 litres. So that was comfortably 60 miles to the gallon, and probably another 40 mile left in the tank. So that to me is valuable. It's more valuable to me to have that kind of tank range and easy sort of fuel consumption than it is to have the extra bang out of 1,000, because I've scratched that itch in a former life, and I find that the sort of 30 to 90 mile an hour sort of zone is where most, dare you say, sensible people live. And when I'm riding in that zone, this is more than comfortable to keep you entertained. So tank range and stuff is it's right up there, with some of the bigger, sort of more expensive dedicated tourers. So the maintenance of the thing, I mean, all I'm doing to it, is chucking some oil in every 5,000 instead of 7, and just keeping on top of the the safety checks. Mark 3 had still had good chain and sprockets on at 10,000 mile. I use an automatic oiler, which probably helps it. Anything chassis wise, I mean, yeah, these things come with Dunlop, these Sports Max 222s or something, can't remember. The Dunlop 222s, and how can I put it? They've still got them on now. They're not terrible, but they're not inspiring when it's raining, that's for sure. They're not. They're very disconnected. But on a nice dry day like today, and a little bit of heat in the tyres, I mean, they do a good job. I mean, it's only 70 horsepower. Not like you're braking traction or anything. So yeah, but yeah, you won't lament taking them off. And I suppose because of their old technology, they only last about 3,500 miles, 4,000 miles tops. The rear. Whereas something more modern like the Pirellis I've used on, and the Pilots, they're nearer 6 to 7 to 8,000. So I'll be quite happy to get them off the next few weeks and put some better rubber on for all-round use. So yeah, they're not the best. Chassis itself is, I believe, reasonably sort of a shorter wheelbase, and of course the 17-inch front wheels. You've probably, like I did, seen people compliment its all-round sort of handling, and yeah, it's a very very likeable machine when it comes to swinging through a few bends. They're horrible sort of potholey hits. It's shattered a bit, but I mean, if I was on the T7 down there, it'd rattle my teeth out. Honestly, it would. It's they kind of balls that up. They tried to make it good for off-road and good for on-road, and made the bollocks of it both ways. yeah, so the actual riding of the thing, country lanes, I just waft along. I mean, it's 4,000 revs now, so shift at 6, let it go, shift at 6, and it shoves you along nicely. Red line's 10,000 revs, I think. So it makes most of it zip between 6 and 7.5. I'll be honest with you, I really go over 7. I'm not even going to try and impress anyone here. I'm going to, I'm just going to ride like I normally do, not try and prove to someone that this is a fast bike, because it's not. But what it isn't, it isn't slow. These longer gears now, they pull nicely, and what's it doing now? 5,500 revs, and it's effortless. Very stable, very planted. I don't know what this Mini's doing. Turning maybe, cyclist maybe, yeah, young kid. 3 young kids. Them were the days, weren't they? Little bicycle adventure. Chuck yourself in the canal with a cheese sarnie, playing truant from school. Then someone robs a bike out of the bike shed and you're number one suspect because you're not bloody there. Oops. Yeah, good on them. Better than the PlayStation. Yeah, so general riding along, as I say, it's kind of a bit like the Versys. It's quite pleasing. It's, just enough. I mean, 5,000 revs, blah, blah, blah. I don't feel short of speed. I don't feel short of comfort. And I don't feel short of brakes. I've got to say, given that, they're not no name, are they? They're not big name brakes. They're Nissan, which I suppose, well known, but they're not the big sort of hard-hitting Brembo stuff or anything. The brakes on this bike, I don't think anyone could criticise them. They've got a lovely sort of firm feel to them, very progressive and not fierce on the initial bite, but I can't complain at all. I mean, you use one finger, you anticipate most situations. One finger is absolutely plenty. Add a second finger and I swear you could put yourself over the handlebars. They're progressive, they're strong, and the ABS doesn't intrude, as far as I know, as far as I want to push it anyway, too soon. I mean, if you put a big handful of front on, you've got to be careful with the rear because there's no bloody weight on it, but I've never locked a wheel on these, from when I've got a bit giddy, and they really do, give you confidence that you can stop, should something happen. So yeah, I've got to, it's not often you give anything 10 out of 10, but you've got to give it a 9 3/4, isn't it, for the brakes. So all good so far. I'll say with this 16 tooth now, you can kind of just hold the mid gears, and it gives that little bit longer length. You can kind of roll on, and then just kind of trim on the throttle, steady in the corner, and go again. Well, really quite a nice spread of gears, and then when you've finished, just pop it into fifth, pop it into sixth. So yeah, what I can't put over, you know, is that you could never put over, you know, in a video, and how can you, is that this bike is so comfy and so sort of planted. You could ride this forever. I mean, you know, until the fuel runs out. I just use fifth now as like a doing gear, you know, and roll fifth on. Still doing 6,000 revs, and you've still got that long, sort of lazy overdrive six to pop in, you know. Should you want to, you know, sixth is good from 55 mile an hour now. And so far so good, yeah, it's rides nice, no complaints in the corners. And what I have found is that, you know, when you do get round to putting some quicker turning tyres on, it's actually more impressive still. Very stable, very planted, very easy to change direction, you know, should you want to. It's quite a heavy thing, but you know, the weight disappears, you know, as soon as you move it, like most bikes. Something worth noting, the turning circle is really, really tight, not tippy. So yeah, it's quite a nimble machine, and occasionally, like everybody, we have to put a shift in and use the main roads. Got to be careful, you know, what you're doing, you know, on video. But it's funny, little Fiat there, I overtook it, and it starts to accelerate. I mean, why? You know, could walk quicker, couldn't it? He still wants to tail me and swing his dick about. Anyway, yeah. One thing you can rely on, because it's well advertised that this is the heavier, you know, bikes, I suppose, when it comes to, you know, the 650 class, 700 class. It's not that much heavier than my T7, I don't think. That was a bit of a dead weight. The Tracer 7 and the 660 Tiger are much more noticeably lighter. You can kind of, as soon as you move it off the stand. And yeah, I mean, the quick and the nimble, and the problem with the Tracer 7 for me was it was just too small. I don't mean the engine's a peach, but it's physically too small. And the Tiger was similar, it was kind of a skinny kind of feeling to it. Point of this being is that although they're not, you know, quite as dynamic, I think the Tiger was 80 horsepower. The MT-07 engine is 70 something. A little bit of weight in the right place at the right time can be a good thing. Point of this being, I mean, this will sail, you know, beyond the speed easily. It's doing 5,700, 600 revs or something. Don't want to get too close to this car. But it's absolutely rock solid. I mean, I could take my hands off the handlebars if I could get cruise control, which is something obviously would be nice, but I can live without. I've one of them close peg things with keep it there if I do a big motorway stint. It's absolutely rock solid. Not getting affected by, it's quite breezy as you can see, any headwinds, side winds, lorries, anything of that nature. It's an absolute rock. And as I say, I'm not speaking here to prove any. Nice steady sort of cruising speed there, just coming up to 5,800 revs, and it can go faster. But even now, I'd say on the motorway, this is my kind of cruising speed. You get in about 50 to the gallon. You get it to a solid 220 mile. If you're on your way up to Scotland or something, before you need to go looking for petrol. So obviously, the faster you go, the less your tank range. But it's with the big screen and the wing, the Ergonomics. There's nothing on your knees. There's nothing at all touching the helmet. I've only got this down because I don't want to catch a stone or a fly or whatever. It's pretty effortless affair. Surprisingly very capable highway bike. What you can't put over in the video is that it's absolutely vibration free, smooth as something very smooth. Those kind of cruising paces, you wouldn't ripple a cup of tea if you put it on the end of the handlebar. It's just totally and utterly vibration free. Back to the competition. I rode the 660 Tiger. I rode a 900 as well, and that was at Yule's at Bolton. And this gearbox is getting smoother, honestly. Weirdly, you must know it's on telly. And it's the point of that being is that it's right next to the M60 something motorway. And to get into the country roads, did a little bit of motorway to get there. And I did a couple of sections of motorway on the Tiger 660. A, because I was test riding it, and B, I needed to. And similar kind of sort of thing I've just been doing there, and the vibrations were absolutely awful. We had this high pitched sort of tingle coming through the handlebars, just where you don't want it, just where you're going to sit, on your way to Scotland. And it really was annoying. I think Triumph need to, take a leaf out of Kawasaki's book here, and everything's rubber mounted. The handlebars, the footrests and hangers, the exhaust, and what they have done, Kawasaki, is insulated the vibration from the engine to the rider brilliantly well. You put your hand on the tank and you can feel the vibes. You put your hand on the handlebar and it's just absolutely nothing. You get a little bit, if you're in town and you get it, lug it under 3,000 revs, it's a typical sort of, that bit where the twin's just out of its, lugging a little bit. But anything over 3,000 revs generally is sweet as a nut. It in some ways feels like a 4, it's that smooth, but the engine braking you get, when you're riding in the country lanes, it is, twice as much. You've got that lovely sort of, roll off and roll on sort of proper engine brake to it. But yeah, vibration wise, this thing is very, very good. The T7 I had was pretty good in that respect. The MT-07 engine is a really good engine, and as I say, did the same treatment, 16-tooth front sprocket. The only thing with the T7 was it was a little bit more thirsty. Over the 7,000-8,000 mile I owned it, the trip thing was averaging 53, and it was a little bit more thirsty on the motorway too. It was I haven't got the exact figures, but I would say this would be comfortably 70 miles better, 80 miles better on any given trip. Not be all and end all, but it's nothing more annoying than going looking for petrol when you're on the motorway, because it's so inconvenient to stop, bloody expensive. So yeah, there it is. It's enough waffle, I suppose. If I summed it up by saying motorcycle news, bike of the year next year would be KTM's 1290, probably. If that's a Rottweiler, what's a versys? It's not a St. Bernard dog. It's not that dull. It's not a terrier, like a Super Moto might be. I'd say Labrador. It's not the fastest. It's not the fiercest, but it's bounds around with energy, and very likeable. Very likeable. It's a sports bike, boys. Hey, it's going a bit faster now. I'm not going to get involved in the Hillbilly Grand Prix. That's why I bought it by size. I don't, I was that soldier. I've done all that, and I'll be honest with you. Riding that bloody thing now any distance would be a thing of torture. Go on, son, show me how much it's got. There he goes. See what I mean? He's not really gapping me that much, and I was in third gear, wasn't even ready. But you go in the real world, having to sort of sit on a wedgie seat and have my wrist broken, to get an extra 3/4 of a second on a standing walk quarter mile is just it's not every remit. I'm past all that crap now. Lovely bike, don't be wrong. I'm not a case in point into these horses for courses. This is basically like sitting in an armchair with a bloody, a small turbine sort of stuck underneath it. Anyway, that's it. It's my take on it. As I say, there's caveats. Maybe passengers are not. It's forte from the point of view of the engine. But there we go. So what we've decided is that you know, with the value of it, I mean, I paid £8 for this delivered, full panniers and everything. It was a winter sale, free pannier deal thing, and then you can get some value like that, you know, on a deal. You know, a full touring bike, ready to roll, full luggage, £8. I find it hard to knock. There we go. So that's it from me. Peace out, and we'll see you on the tour. Cheerio.